every challenge that we face generally shows up as a surface problem, not as the real core problem. So one of the skills, in fact, it's a skill in an understanding on how to connect with people better, is that to understand them at a deep core level. So person with a challenge, they'll talk to you initially based on what their surface problem is, because most people are wearing a mask and they want to protect themselves from the world. So they're going to show up with a surface problem. The challenge for us to connect better is to understand that what's the real core problem that sits at least one, potentially two layers below that. And when one human talking to another human feels understood at the core problem versus the surface problem, we connect a whole lot better.
Hey friends, welcome to Right Off Track, your favorite entrepreneurial resource where we dive into the mindset, strategy, and purpose of entrepreneurs around the world who are sharing their real stories and insights with you. I believe that we all have a unique purpose in life, and that embracing our unique and special journey will help uncover that. If this helps you on your journey, I so welcome your support as we grow and improve this channel. Join us, subscribe. I promise you, I'm fully dedicated to making this work better every step of the way. So share your feedback, subscribe, share with a friend, and let's go on this adventure together right off track. Enjoy this episode.
Going off track is taking a chance on yourself.
Following your pulse of curiosity.
It's making your own decisions.
The most wonderful adventure.
Hey friends, I'm your host, Anya Smith. In today's episode, we're joined by Torrin Minutillo, a seasoned business veteran whose journey of 34 years began in an era preceding our digital world. Torrin has crafted an innovative sales method that intricately weaves together human behavior and strategic business practices. His approach, high-level selling, where art meets science, provides rich insights for entrepreneurs looking to refine their sales tactic and fulfill their ambitions. And so I'm excited to welcome Torrin.
Thanks, Anya. Nice to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
And where in the world are you, just for our guests to know?
Yes, I'm in the southwest corner of Australia. So the city is Perth, so just south of the city of Perth. So quite a large city, of approximately 2 million people. But yeah, and probably one of the most isolated cities on the planet, which has its benefits.
No unexpected people coming to see you, maybe a little more planned out. Well, thank you so much for joining me from another part of the world. And I always like to give people space to share their own story a little bit more. I gave a little bit of a blurb, but tell me, how have you found your passion having this long career? And what was the journey like along the way?
Well, that's a big question. And so it's 34 years. Yeah, look, I think my probably passion or original drive as a young person to autonomously run my own, my own career, my own pathway, take control of my own destiny. And I think for me, it became pretty obvious to me that business was going to be a path that I wanted to take as in my working life. And I think it was more the fact that I just wanted to autonomously run my own show, and I didn't necessarily want to work for other people. And that sort of was the embryo, if you like. But yeah, I think as it's gone on, like everybody who's been in a long business journey, there's no straight line to success. It's pretty much a zigzag path, and hopefully you slowly, incrementally grow and move further ahead. And my story is no different. Lots of ups and downs, particularly in the first phase. And then, I stumbled in 2008, so around about 20 years into my business journey. 2008 global financial crisis was my reckoning time, I suppose. And leading up to that, from the outside looking in, it would seem that things were pretty good, and I thought they were. And by any levels of success, I was doing pretty well. But yeah, that 3-year period really rocked me back on my feet from 2008, 2011. So my story is one of sort of pre-global financial crisis, and then one after, sort of since then, and potentially you could say it was my resurrection and to where I'm now. And sort of looking back from that vantage point to where I'm now, I never thought I'd have the success I have now. Back then, at the time, it was just really about survive and get through. And my turnaround really was around, taking responsibility for my own destiny, really. And there was lots of different moments in that time, in that 3-year struggle between 2008, 2011. Couple stick out, and one in particular was just a sort of attitude change that I went to this. I'm in real estate, so I haven't mentioned that, but I've got a real estate company that I've been involved now for 23 years. But around about 2011, I went to a seminar, a real estate seminar, and there was a chap that was presenting, which was a quite well-known Australian real estate agent. And he got up on stage and said a lot of things, but in an hour. But one thing that stood out to me was that he, as an organisation, decided they weren't going to participate in the global financial crisis. And that really struck me as just an attitude thing, right? Like, so you either get stuck in the woe of what's going on, or you take control of your own attitude. And so that was one of the key catalysts that got me thinking that, well, yeah, I can just take responsibility from where I'm at. And if I do that, then I'm in control of moving forward. And so that led me down a pathway of learning more about myself and self-development. And went into that, became a bit of a student of that, and then became pretty obsessive about it, because as I implemented a lot of things that I was learning, I started to get exponential results very quickly. And sort of so from 2011 through to, the next 5-6 year period, I just kept growing month on month, quarter on quarter. And now, like, I've built a business now where I've pretty much extracted myself out of that. So on that journey, I learned a huge amount around human behavior, because I became a real student of that, of the human condition. And then I use that all in my business journey. And so I like to think about it now as that I connect the human experience with the business experience rather than separate it. And I think what underpins that is that the business experience is just a field of endeavor that you choose to go into, but the human experience underlies everything we do. And when we pay attention to that and bring that to the business experience, like any field of endeavor, you get much better results, because you understand yourself better and you understand the people around you better. And you then potentially can make more sales or build better relationships, which is what business is all about. So I think, that's pretty much a little snapshot of my 34 years in business to where I am now. Obviously, there's, as I said, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but certainly the last 11 years, since 2012, 13 to now, it's been one of sort of upward growth. I haven't had too many downs. It's just been constant building each year. So that's my story, Anya.
I love it. There's so many points I want to hit on, but one I'm going to start with is, you mentioned that you had this epiphany that mindset is very important. And I'm curious, what actions did you start taking once you had that realization? Because, you were already starting something, obviously you were making some traction, challenges happened, but what specific actions did you start taking for yourself? And like, what maybe examples of changes that happened once you adapted this change?
Yeah, look, I think the number one thing, and this is easier on reflection now than when you're in it, but becoming really self-aware of why you are getting the results you're getting, why you're behaving the way you behave, why you're making the decisions that you're making. And I really, in a space of, what seemed like a long time, but it was probably 2 to 3 to 4 months, got really curious about the fact that every decision I made had an impact on my results. And what was causing my results was how I was seeing the world around me and how I was reacting to that. So it's just really becoming self-aware of myself. So now I tell them, because I'm a business coach now and help other people in their business line as well as my real estate company. And one of the things I say to people is that self-awareness is like the number one skill in business, is really becoming aware of why you do what you do, why you're not getting what you're getting. And the interesting thing I've found about that, Anya, is that we as business owners and people in general tend to try and figure everybody else out, what they're doing, so we can take advantage of that or move our way in life. But we don't think about how to work ourselves out. And what I found is that when I started, and I was guilty of that as well, and when I started just working on myself and understanding why I did what I did, I actually started to understand the people around me a lot better as well, because the human experiences, which I've come to understand and learn, is that we all live the human experience. There's ups and downs. We're driven by emotions, all the things that we do. So there's patterns there. And if you understand your own patterns, there's a good chance that you might understand the patterns around. And then when you can connect better, which is what our nervous system is built to do, if we allow it to, then we have much better connection. So I think for me, it was really that self-awareness. I really went deep into that to understand what was driving my results. And of course, that led me down a whole lot of learning paths about all sorts of different ways about, I got right into neuroscience, neurobiology, our neurology, the history of that, how we've evolved as humans. That's all part of understanding the human experience of why we've evolved for the beings that we are now. And as I said, that kept helping me connect with other people. And, particularly in the real estate business over the years, that's a good asset to have, to be able to connect with other people and to be able to help them through, like any business, fixing their problems. You've got to understand people at a deeper level. So yeah, I think I'd say that the one catalyst, if I had to put it, there's lots of things, but one main thing is I would encourage everybody is to go on a journey of self-discovery and understand yourself, know thyself, which is a famous, biblical term, know thyself. And it's so true that it's part of the self-awareness journey. And then for me, probably the other bit to that is realizing that all of us either have what psychologists would call an internal locus of control or an external locus of control, which basically which basically means that you're relying on things outside of your control to drive your destiny, or if you've got an internal locus of control, everything within you is going to make a decision to drive your destiny. And I think once you become self-aware that potentially you're in the blame game, everybody else is causing your problems, the world, the economy, the government, the fill in the blank, that's an external locus of control where you're being controlled by your environment, versus an internal locus of control is I'm going to be disciplined, have courage to push through, do the things I need to do to achieve what I want to achieve. And interestingly enough, as you grow, the more you can have an internal locus of control, the better your results get and the better you connect with other people. And so that's an observation that I've made. So those two things, self-awareness and really understanding that internal. And then when you meet someone, you now know within a space of 5 minutes, when you understand this, whether they have an internal locus of control or an external one. And maybe as a business person, you're more adaptable and can work with people who have an internal locus of control because they make decisions based on their destiny and not what everybody else says. So it's actually a pathway to understanding and connecting with people that are going to work with you and not against you. And when you understand that, you can make better connections and then make better business decisions. So it's all looped, and it's been one of my foundational benefits, I suppose you could say.
I love it. There's so many things that I want to unpack here as well. So one important thing is to realize that, again, we're humans and we don't stop being humans when we start, doing business. That we have to remember that sometimes we're like, oh, we're not human anymore. We don't get sick. We don't get tired. We just show up in our polished suits and we pretend to be a certain way. And that's, that has its place perhaps. But a lot of times we forget that we still need to be humans, and how we interact and connect with people is really what's going to make the big difference long term. And then you mentioned the element about how pivotal the crisis part of your life has been. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening can relate to that, whether it's because of the pandemic happening or because they have other experiences currently or past in their life. And so when you talk about having this self-awareness, right, that was a game changer for you, are there any pieces of practical advice for our listeners, or maybe the ones that you also give to your clients, that have helped people not just have this aha moment, but then to actually keep implementing that in their life?
Yeah, it's a constant challenge. I would like to think that I'm pretty well developed and I understand myself, but it doesn't mean on a day-to-day basis I don't get challenged around this, right? So I think one of the key, having that day I mentioned when I listened to that chap talk on stage, and his attitude was, if you remember that story, it's like, well, we didn't participate. We decided as an organization we weren't going to participate in the global financial crisis. So you can add whatever you want, COVID pandemic, economic crisis, whatever, stock market crash. You can add in whatever crisis
Child
or
madness,
challenge.
wherever you're at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that when I heard that, it really shifted my attitude. And one of the first things I learned around the human study, which I now share with my clients a lot, or to think this way, is I can't remember the name of the person who coined it. I think it's Anna Innes or someone like that. But it's that we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. So what that means is that we got to stop and reflect every time. Is it my bias that's coming through here? Am I really seeing the situation or the circumstance, the challenge of what it really is? Or am I seeing it through my conditioned behaviors over a long period of time? And when you got that level of awareness and understand that almost all the time, we do see things through our natural bias. We see things as we are, not as they are. And when you stop yourself and go, okay, let me think about it now from a different perspective and actually see things as they are, you start to see things that you normally wouldn't see, and therefore you see other people's point of view. You understand the challenges better. You figure out a way to work through whatever challenge or problem you might have better, because you're now not just fixated by seeing it through your own mindset, which is, again, a human experience is the natural thing to do that. We all condition our belief systems, all things that we grow up with, our value systems, to see things in a certain way, which means that you become less tolerant to what's really happening in front of you. So I think one of the skill sets, and it is a skill to stop yourself and understand, and like it's, for me, I might as well have it tattooed on my forehead, because I just think about this all the time. It just comes up in everyday life that, with people that I'm meeting, and if I'm having a challenge with someone, I just take a pause and go, well, they're not seeing things as they are. They're seeing things as they see it, who they are. And when you take that attitude towards it, you've got a better chance of connecting with them and get them to see your point of view and potentially influence and make them compliant with what it is that you want them to help you with, whatever that may be in business. We know that there's always a challenge around the corner every day in business.
Oh, absolutely. Plenty of them happening along the way, and plenty will keep happening. Two things come to mind when you mentioned that. In my recent journey, I realized that there's a disconnect that I had between my logical perception also of like how I'm showing up, and then the emotional side. I was realizing that maybe I didn't reflect on like how much compassion am I actually having for myself in my experiences.
Yes.
Like how much, and that correlates to how much compassion I can have to other people as well. And when you have compassion, you can also look at things more objectively, in my opinion. And I realized also that here I thought, I have some challenging past periods, and I was like, okay, but I'm not showing up as a victim. Like I thought this does not define me. And I realized that when I am actually stressed, like those are the first responses that are coming out of me, you know, and that was through coaching and whatnot. So it's interesting. Sometimes we can have this rational idea of like how we show up and what's serving us and be like, oh, that's really working really well. But I'm finding through my journey that it is also necessary to take that space for self-reflection and healing to really connect with like, how am I truly showing up? If I'm being raw and honest with myself, if I'm actually feeling the energy versus just logically observing it. And that has helped me show up more objectively, I believe, in the world. And then to your second point, I think a lot of times we look at other people like, I want to change you. If only you can be different. And what gives me actually hope in that is that the way change happens is that you change yourself. So if you're really, really feeling this desire to change other people, the way you're going to do that is that by changing yourself, because then you can have a different perspective, like what's possible. And if the change is actually ever going to happen for other people, it's because they're going to see you and have some kind of different shift because they see you growing or changing, and they'll have a certain opinion about that or a certain perspective, and that will influence some change. What are your perspectives on that? Like, how do you actually help, have this inner reflection, and maybe do you see any separation between our logical side and maybe a deeper emotional side?
Well, okay. How long have you got? Because it's brilliant.
Bring it on.
I love the question because it's right in my wheelhouse of how I see the world now. I never used to, but certainly as I've evolved, to come to understand that emotions is driving everything, right? So how we feel drives how we think, and then how we think then can drive your emotions. But the neurology or who we are as human beings, how we've evolved, it's our nervous system that's reacting with feeling first, which sends a signal to our brain that then causes a reaction. And so those feelings, as they grow within us, they then evolve into what we know as emotion, whether that's fear, whether that's happiness, sadness, whatever it may be, disappointment, frustration. They're all emotions, but they start with a feeling, which then, if we cultivate that with rumination or thought, it develops into something more. And then at let's say the the end of emotion on the negative side, you get angry, and that then leads into that. Once you get into that state, your neocortex, your thinking brain, shuts down, and you don't even know what's going on, right? So the reason I preface that is, so a technique or a tool is to understand, come to grips, and this is challenging for a lot of people, and it certainly was for me, is to understand how much emotions is driving everything we do. And people say to me, yeah, but I'm not emotional, I'm a logical thinker. Got some bad news for you, is that if you say that you're a logical thinker, the reason you're a logical thinker is because you processing things that way makes you feel safe. And the reason that you feel safe is because of a feeling that's created, that if I think logically through this, that's going to make me feel safe. And that's a feeling. So it's actually driven by emotion why people become logical thinkers. So it's not like you're either one or the other. You are an emotional being. You just express that safety through logical thinking because that's what keeps you safe. Because ultimately our nervous system is built for two things: to keep us safe and to connect with other humans. Otherwise we would never have survived and thrived for 60 odd million years to what we've developed as our brain structure and our nervous system now, because it's developed through a whole bunch of things. And a way to really understand this is that the emotional system has been developing for 60 odd million years to the structure that we have now, the limbic system, the reptilian system. But the higher order brain is only developed in the last 110,000 years. So in comparison, it's not even the half of a page at the end of a book that we've learned to logically think through stuff. So if you've got any doubt about this, is that the emotional system is so strong within us that drives everything we think and do, that when you get into a situation in business or wherever it is, the better question to stop yourself is, why am I feeling this way? Create a circuit around stopping to think, why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling disappointed? Why am I feeling frustrated? And Dr. Joan Rosenberg, who's a genius in this field, 40-year psychologist. Hope I've got that right, Joan. And she's written a great book about the 90 seconds to a better life, which basically tells us that an emotion will last for 90 seconds within the feelings or the chemical reaction within our body and dissipate within 90 seconds if we allow it to. If we fuel it with thought and more anger and more sadness and more, it'll just keep on growing and growing. It could potentially last for a day, a week, a month, years, and so on. So if we learn, and I highly would recommend that book, just look up Joan Rosenberg, and because it's really changes the way you think about how we behave and how we react versus responding to life's situations. So reacting is the emotions are reacting to it, whereas considered response is time to stop, think, be considered, allowing that chemical reaction within your bloodstream to dissipate. So now you can engage your higher order brain to think through what the response needs to be. Now, a personal thing, I've never read this in a book, but I believe that our higher order brain 110,000 years ago, thereabouts, was developed purely to control our emotional system. It was developed and evolved within us so we can actually keep control of our emotional system, so that we can function better as a human race, as we've evolved over the last 100. But that's another big topic. That's just a theory. It's not my own theory on that one.
Thank you for sharing the theory and the practical things. One thing that I want to also share and clarify, when we talk about, think about your emotions and then take a pause, I don't personally believe we should suppress our emotions. So I want to be clear that when we talk about that, it's not saying, hey, I'm not going to feel them, but it's saying we're not going to give them more power. And I think that's the difference that people have, is that they think that they need to either stop feeling or just give in to them fully, meaning just give them more energy and kind of heighten them up. And I found the balance for myself is just to fully feel that emotion, give it compassion and love. And that gives it space to just, come in. I'm not pushing you out, but I'm not asking you to stay. I'm just letting you be there for as long as you need to, easily let go, right? You have an open door policy with an exit door.
Yeah. Now, Anya, just to be really clear about that, so as I said, if you read the book, it'll explain it much better than probably I can or I have so far. And that is that what Joan says is that we create a whole bunch of stuff in our life that actually avoids you feeling that feeling. So what I'm saying is feel the feeling, but allow it to come through so you can recognize what is it? Why have I got it? In other words, don't suppress it, feel it, and certainly don't avoid it by creating a whole bunch of activities in our life, whether it be substance abuse or whether it be workaholic or whether it's a distraction. So Joan calls it, we create all these distractions so we don't feel the feeling. And then, of course, if you don't feel it, it just keeps growing it and you don't allow it to dissipate. You just suppress it and eventually it bottles up and it shows up when you least want it to and then causes you more pain. So, so I suppose the point I was trying to make here is that, from your question is that really how much emotions plays in everything we do. And the more we can understand that in business about the human experience, because this is what I mean about connecting the human experience to business experience. Everybody, whether they're working with us, whether we're trying to help them as our clients and customers, they're all living the human experience and they're all being driven by this emotional drivers that we all have within us. They just show up a whole bunch of different ways depending on your conditioning, your how you were growing up and a whole bunch of other stuff, traumas and all sorts of different things that happen to us. But the point is understanding that emotions are driving pretty much everything. So, the intellectual side, yes, it's there to help us navigate the world, to make sense of things. But you really got to stop and understand that underneath all that is the emotions that are driving everything we do. And then when you embrace that and you use it as a power, well, it's sort of superpower because it's not something that you can choose to tune into or not. Feelings and emotions will come over you. The challenge is to work out how to respond to them better. How do you manage them better? How do you become more emotionally regulated? How do you become more emotionally resilient? And in business, again, one of my super skills has become to become very emotionally resilient to all the ups and downs. And certainly in 2008, I wasn't ready and I wasn't evolved enough to understand that. And sometimes it takes something like that for you to actually stop and think inwardly. And again, I've studied a lot of high performance people on the planet in my search of how to help other people. And in their story, there's often a situation to people who have achieved high things where there has been a moment of reckoning where they've gone inwardly to actually search for what is the answers that's going to help me. So it's not uncommon for people who have achieved high things in life that's been a shift, a catalyst, something's happened, epiphany or whatever it is that's made them think inwardly. And if you look now, the people who say they're not successful, they haven't achieved, they've got this external locus of control, the majority of them. And that's just that's a generality. So it's not, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that is a common thread, is that people who don't get what they want in life is often because they've got an external locus of control. They're not taking control of their own destiny because they're not looking inwardly to who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of my own catalyst because I started this podcast as a aftermath of being laid off from Meta. And there was definitely a time where initially it was terrifying to be like, oh, everything that I've done, my identity is tied to this. And now I'm doing something different. And I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. It has really started this point of reflection of who I am for myself. What do I want to do in the world? What are my real limits? And I'm sure, including myself, would want to know what are some of those tips or practices that you do to be resilient. You mentioned there's some things that you've learned and now you pride yourself in that skill.
Yeah. It's a good question, and there's no easy straight out answer, of course. But I think one of the approaches for that is to understand, because of that emotional reaction that most people have, is that every challenge that we face generally shows up as a surface problem, not as the real core problem. So one of the skills, in fact, it's a skill in an understanding on how to connect with people better and how to help them in sales, is that to understand them at a deep core level. So person with a challenge, and I'll just use this as an example, person has a challenge in business or whatever it is that you might be able to help them with, they'll talk to you initially based on what their surface problem is, because most people are wearing a mask and they want to protect themselves from the world. So they're going to show up with a surface problem. the challenge for us to connect better is to understand that what's the real core problem that sits at least one, potentially two layers below that. And when one human talking to another human feels understood, because that's one of our human addictions, we want to feel understood, feels understood at the core problem versus the surface problem, we connect a whole lot better. And even though the remedy to what it is, the challenge that you have may sit at the surface level, the thing is that we want to be understood at a core level. So if I'm having a conversation with you about a challenge I've got, and we talk at a surface level, you might have an answer for that. But when you understand my challenge at the core level, which is because I'm really connecting with you, and I go, Anya really makes me feel understood. So I'm going to lower my guard and I'm going to trust her because I feel safe, because that's a feeling that makes me feel good. And I know that she can help me evolve and solve my problem. But if we deal at the surface problem, so if we deal at the surface problem, we get surface level answers. We don't, or responses. So one of the challenges from a sales perspective, and in any endeavor in connecting with another human being, which sales, what the predominant underlies a good sales process, is understanding the person's challenge at a core level, and knowing that the person will only ever present in any situation initially with their surface level problem. So if we can get this in our day-to-day when we're trying to connect with other humans, is that how do we go from the surface level to the core level? And that's just being present, making them feel understood, asking, better questions, get them to express themselves, and they will then start to tell you what the core problem really is, because now they're starting to feel understood. Does that make sense as from a perspective of how to connect better with people?
Yes, absolutely. So honoring that, bigger curiosity about not just what the person is saying, but maybe what's the underlying theme of what they are saying. Maybe also honoring the feelings. Right? A lot of times what we feel is coming through our energy and just our body language, and not just what we are saying. So being attuned to all of that. And I would imagine that takes also stepping away from your, cell and just focusing on the other person, right? So if you're just like, okay, I need to say this line, I need to sell this, and we need to make the point Z, you're probably not going to have the space to fully have that attention and presence on the other person, right?
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the intellectual versus the emotional, right? So when we try and intellectualize all these processes, because we think we are connecting at the higher order brain level, in other words, the bit that we use to communicate words back and forth, but really the connection's made at the nervous system emotional level. And so going back to how do you connect with someone at a core level and deeper is when you actually listen to their words and you're trained to listen beyond what's being said, there'll often be words that are being repeated in what people are saying that is really their internal emotions expressing themselves. But if you're not attuned and not present to listen to those, you'll only hear the surface level stuff, because we, as the person who doesn't listen well, is listening to respond and not listening to understand. So when I'm talking to you, and if I'm trying to understand you at a deep level, if you start saying things to me at the surface level, my mind starts to tune into how am I going to respond to this? So when there's a gap, I'll say something, and you're missing the words that are being said to make that person really feel understood at a core level. So I'm actually giving you here the core of my selling process here, and how to understand is that when you understand someone at a deeper level, you got a chance of shifting their emotional state from a negative to a positive. And there's always tension in the sales process, as there is in a lot of connection, particularly if someone new. When you can shift them into a positive emotional state from a potentially a negative emotional state, they're more likely to feel, well, they will still feel safe with you, but they're more likely to be compliant and influenced. The only way you can do that is if they feel understood at the core level of whatever their challenge really is. And there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to help shift that. And the scientific or the neurological thing, it's called emotional refraction, is where you actually can say things and shift someone's emotional state. And we do this all the time. We're not realizing I might say something to you in a terse tone, about something that's happened, and you'll interpret that, and that'll shift your emotional state in a split second from from positive to negative, purely because of what I say. So I'm refracting your emotional state just by saying something in a particular tone or a way. Equally, I can shift someone from a negative emotional state into a positive by using curious, empathetic tones, by using maybe unsure tones. In other words, just connecting with them at a slower pace because their nervous system feels safe, and then they start to open up to you more. You know what it's like. I can say, ask you a question like, how's your day today, Anya? Versus, how's actually your day been today? And I'm in a more empathetic tone. That's going to lower your guard to answer me. Whereas the first one was a little bit, oh, I don't know what to do here, what to say, because that's a bit of a jolt on my nervous system. So you react in a way, and now you've got two people in a tension situation.
Yeah. Torrin, you could be acting. I could just see that split moment, the different thing right here.
Yeah.
People,
And
what
there you go. Sorry.
I was just going to say to our audience who may be thinking, sales, well, I don't do sales. This does not really apply to me. I want to clarify that sales isn't just about physically selling something. You are always selling yourself because that you're always influencing people. So no matter what you do, you have to reframe that and understand that, like me, I had this negative connotation about influence in sales. That it's about, manipulating people and getting something out of it. That's not the full picture. People can do that, and that's only people who are looking probably at the surface level. If you go deeper, it's about helping people and sharing message out into the world. Not because you want, you are pushing it, but because you want to help people get better. And so I think that when you show up with this view of you're living with conviction, you have this purpose that you believe in, then the influence becomes like, hey, I just want to help people see this. I want them to get better. And so that's how you grow your influence. And this showing up with curiosity and getting to a deeper level is going to help you be more influential. And so it's something that you will take away no matter what you do, every part of your job. If you are a business owner, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're just a student, the influence is how you connect with people and become more able to have deeper relationships with those people, which is going to be invaluable, whatever you do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that, we particularly in business, because, what I would say about my observation around business owners, and I was no different, is that a lot of, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's high. Let's call it more than 80% of people get into business, not because they're good at sales. It's because they want to follow a passion or a drive and they're good at delivering their product or service to whatever that is. But they're not necessarily naturally good at sales. So then sales becomes one of those evil necessities that you got to do to be able to get your new business through the front door, which you do, right? Because it's a spearhead of every business. No sales success usually means no business success. Well, there's a very strong correlation between the two. But what ends up happening, you end up doing it badly because you feel like you need to convince someone to do something. And my method is all about...
And you're desperate.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So this is the other thing too, is that, I talk when I'm teaching people around high-level selling is about there's lots of potholes that we fall into. And one of the biggest potholes is, whose problem are you solving? Are you solving your problem because you need the money, you need the business? And you're hoping that your client, your prospect, your customer is going to solve your problem by giving you money for a product or service so that you can fix your problem, whatever that is, as opposed to what they're interested in is how you're going to fix their problem. So when you drop your own agenda and you focus on your customer's agenda and help them through a process of understanding. So the difference I see between influence and manipulation, because they're two completely different things. Manipulation is saying the wrong things to coerce someone into doing something. Yeah, exactly. That's the evil, Dr. Evil in Austin Powers, right? As versus influence is me opening you up to understand something that you haven't been able to see that might actually help you on the pathway to whatever it is you're trying to achieve, your cause, your goal in life, whatever that is. And this product or service that I have that can solve that problem might help you advance that course quicker to get it wherever it is you want, right? So my job is to, in fact, I would say in selling, really it's about positioning so that the customer actually makes the sale because you become the obvious choice to solve their problem. And if you're in a business that requires relationship to be built, so in other words, relational selling versus transactional, That's where this is most powerful and most influential. And the good news is you don't have to be a super salesperson to do this. It's a skill that you learn to probably say less and allow your customers just to actually tell your clients, customers, to tell you what it is they want, because we have our own priorities of what we think people need or want, but we don't listen to our clients' priority, and everybody's got a different priority. And if we're not listening to that priority, they don't feel understood. And when you think they're going to say yes to your product or service, their nervous system and emotions pops up and says, hang on a minute, I don't feel safe. Let's find an excuse of why not to go ahead. And that is, can I get back to you tomorrow? Can I ask my brother, my sister, my mother, my uncle, my lawyer, my fill in the blank? I'm not sure yet. I haven't quite understood everything. And that's the emotional part, not feeling safe. And so really what's happening is you haven't done a good job of making that person feel safe and in a positive zone so they can see what it is you have to offer that's going to help. And that's not saying that 100% of people are right for you. In fact, I would say that if you got 80% of people are right for you, 20 are not. But we don't get anywhere near 80% conversion. We're lucky. Well, the industry average, you say it's between 5 and 30. They're right across every industry. So I'm trying to buck that trend and go, well, if you take this different approach and not be so intellectual and become more emotional, you're going to increase your conversion rates dramatically. And that's basically how I built the second half of my business life, through that method of connecting with people that drop in my agenda, showing up to serve, understanding what it is they need, and then growth comes because people then seek you out, and then you get repetitive business. It just grows on it. And look, the other big thing about it is that from a business context, because a lot of people aren't good at sales and they're good at delivering their product or service, they fall into this trap of attracting lower value clients, people that maybe they don't necessarily want to work with. So what ends up happening is people build a business by default and not by design. How you build a business by design is when you have a good sales process that attracts high value clients so that you can target high value clients who actually value this. You then now are starting to build a business by design and not one by default. And the people that are burnt out in business is because 6, 7, 9, 10 years into it, they've been building a business by default that they're now not energized anymore. They don't feel passionate about as much. They're not inspired to do the work. It's because they're dealing with a whole bunch of people that don't really want to. And one of the core things is I've identified, it's just because you don't have a good sales process to actually seek out and work with people that I would consider a high value client versus things. So the whole premise of high level selling is a way, and I call it where art meets science. So art is the actual part of, the strategy, how you position yourself, what you say. The science is the connection between me and you as the client and the person delivering. That's the science. That's our emotional connection. That's the neurobiology that we need. Now, the interesting thing is, what I've observed is that you can do the intellectual stuff super, super, super well, know your stuff, have the strategy and everything. But if you don't do the emotional connection, the sale will generally fail. But if you do a poor job on the intellectual stuff, but you do a really good job at the emotional stuff, the sale will proceed and you'll get the nod over and above someone who's presented so much better, but they just didn't connect with. So the evidence, I haven't come up with the evidence because I'm just a living example of it, and my clients and people I help are good examples of it. And so, what I would say to people who are struggling with sales conversion, or they maybe don't like that part of the business, is to seek out some help and actually find a natural human way to connect. And I think you'll find that you'll start to embrace it and really enjoy it, because you can then play with it and actually make good human connections. And, it does take a little bit of vulnerability because you do have to drop all your own concerns and your own consequences. But I can tell you the other side of it is a much better business life.
Yes. And it also sounds like a much better energy flow for you as the salesperson or somebody who's trying to have those relationships. It sounds a lot more enjoyable to have this perspective in the long run. And I wanted to ask, we talked about control. And initially, when you talked about having that aha moment of, oh, I can be in control of this situation, that was empowering. But then we talked about also removing some of the control, meaning like we're not pushing for the sale, we're being curious. So how do you navigate this balance between having control of yourself, but also releasing control of, expectations about how other people are going to react or what's going
Love
to be
that
the
question.
outcome?
But this is a brilliant question. Thank you. The challenge is, particularly in a sales environment or any business environment, is to let go of the consequences of the outcome that we place ourselves on the outcomes. So we conjure up all these consequences about us doing things in business, and whether it's sales, whether it's standing in front of a group and talking, whether it may be. There's a whole bunch of emotional stuff that happens. And the reason we get in that emotional discomfort, I think is the word, emotional discomfort is the best way to describe it, is because of the consequences that we place on the outcome, which never as bad as you make them out to be. I.e., if I don't get this sale, my life is going to fill in the catastrophe, right? But on the flip side, if you let go of that outcome and you drop the consequences and you don't have tension within it, because one of the key pillars of this method is that you as a person need to be in a positive emotional state, because what the neurology says is that if you're in a negative state, you'll never be able to shift someone into a positive emotional state, right? You can't have a negative person pushing someone into a positive state.
That's so
Shifting,
powerful.
right? So if you go into a position of calming yourself, dropping the consequences, all that sort of stuff, and now you're in a positive state emotionally self, there's no tension within you, that energy isn't going to flow. And there's more chance, literally there's a line, one side is a negative side and that side is a positive side. You want to get both people over to the positive side. Your starting point, well, I need to live on the positive side. Now, the thing that happens, and which comes up in questions for me, is that in the sales process, the connection or whatever it is that you get triggered by something that someone says or whatever that shifts you back to the negative state. You've got to be mindful of that and go, I've just been triggered. I feel this feeling of this is not going where I was hoping to go. So you've really got to brace yourself internally and get you back into that positive state, drop the consequences, be of service, and you'll see the person start shifting back towards you in that positive state. So I think the answer to the question is, from the control perspective, is part of the control is letting go of control.
It's so simple, but so difficult.
It's very, very difficult. I've been struggling with it for 30 odd years, and it was taught to me exactly that way. The way to get better control over your life is to let go of controlling everything. And there's many people that we know in our circle and of influence that are always looking to control everything. Again, it's a nervous system reaction to making them feel safe, driven by their neurology and their emotional system based on their conditioning over their lifetime. And how they're coding who they were, how they've been, their value system, their belief system that have been indoctrinated into them. And it's not an easy thing to shift, but this comes back to self-awareness. When you're prepared to listen to maybe what other people are saying, and so the question I like to ask people is, what you're doing at the moment, is that serving you? Not is it good, bad, or otherwise? That's judgment. Is it serving you? And if the answer is yes, it's serving me, keep doing it and go for it. But if the answer is no, it's not really serving me, then you need to figure out what's the self-awareness thing, what's the emotional driver, what's happening within me that's causing me for this not to serve me. And the how you judge that, is it serving you, is what's the results I'm getting, what's the outcomes I'm getting. Do I like those outcomes? Whether they're financial, whether they're emotional, whether they're relationships, whatever they are. Am I getting the good outcomes I want? Therefore, it's serving me. If I'm not getting the good outcomes and you recognize them as bad outcomes, then it means it's not serving you. That's a signal to you, is that I need to go deeper to figure out what's going on here. How am I showing up? Why am I making these decisions? And when you're prepared to do that exploration, it's worthwhile, because when you start to shift the way you do things, you change your results. And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, I'm not happy with what I got in my world, whatever that is, and I want to get something different, the starting place is looking in the mirror and starting becoming a little bit more inward and reflective on what you're doing, and understanding yourself that it's not an intellectual process. This is another thing, right? We spend far too much time trying to find that intellectual solution for an emotional problem. And it's like,
Yes. Yes,
like
I completely agree.
it's like trying to use fuel to put out a fire. That's not going to work.
But I needed that. I needed that personally. That reflection on control is something that, like a lot of listeners, I'm sure, is a struggle for me. And I realized that, and again, I've been logically trying to control that. And recently I found that going inwards has been a lot more healing and powerful. So definitely seeing that trend is serving me better, like you said.
Yeah.
And I want to give space. I know you were masterfully putting in some of the insights from your program, the high level selling program. Is there anything that we missed that you want to share before we wrap up?
Regarding that, you mean? Well,
Yes.
I think we covered a fair bit of it. Understanding that there's some pillars there of essentially what happens in a sales process is what I would call like an invisible barrier gets created between you and the prospect, you and the client that you're trying to serve, because you're staying too intellectual in the process. I'm not saying you don't need to know your stuff and you need to be able to serve in a way that helps that person understand what it is, your value proposition. That's the art of selling. But that's not the hard bit. The hard bit is actually how to connect, which is what I found. What people find is how to connect and make that person feel. Because we haven't used the word trust yet today, right? But every sales guru on the planet will say that they need to you need to get prospect to know, like, and trust you. Well, trust, the word we use is trust, but what it's really saying is I feel safe. When I trust you, it's because I feel safe with you, and that's my nervous system reacting. Here's the tip that I would give around this is that your prospect needs to feel known, liked, and trusted as well for them to be able to know, like, and trust you. But every sales guru manual that I've ever read always talks about how you need the prospect to like and trust you, but there's never any emphasis on how you need to like and trust your prospect to make them feel safe and comfortable with who you are, what you're doing. So if you just did that and focused on liking and trusting your prospect, your sales conversion will probably go up by 20 to 30% overnight, just doing that one thing.
Wow.
Because think about it. When you're in a sales situation, do you want the person that's helping you to trust and like you? Or do you want them to go, I don't think they trust me. They're just going to tell me what I need to hear, but they don't want to tell me what the truth is that I need to know. That will create an emotional reaction within you, which will put you into the negative zone. And what they're saying becomes blah, 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 blah. All you get is the feeling between that person, which doesn't have words. And the intellectual stuff just goes, yep, yep, yep. But the moment they've stopped talking, you've already forgotten about what's been said. So the challenge here is that we need to make an emotional connection. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do, trigger emotions through approval and acceptance, because we're all addicted to that. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I teach and share in the programs around that. So yeah, if you're looking for a different way of selling, I call it high level selling, where art meets science, because you do need to have the art as well, but that's a skill. It's not a numbers game. It's not a show up 100 times and hope that 5 people say yes. That's 50 years old, that stuff, before we knew. And look, the other thing too is that there's so much noise in the marketplace these days. Everybody's a guru. Everybody's got the answer. That really people are looking for that connection, that emotional connection to feel safe, because we know as life goes on and more complex it becomes, it's harder to make connections with people and to feel safe. So if you're the person that's doing that, that's going to be a beacon to the people that you're trying to serve, because most of the other people aren't.
I love this. Thank you so much for taking all of your experiences and then humanizing them, because I think it's so important, again, to give people a sense of hope, even when maybe they're like, oh gosh, what can I do now? How can I really connect? It seems like, again, it's overwhelming or challenging or emotionally unsettling. And here you're providing this hope of a different option that's more authentic, that's, to me, feels more energy, healing and more energy positive, more energy empowering. So thank you so much for sharing that. And where should people find you? So I'll obviously include all the links, but what's some resources that people should check out?
Look, I think the easiest way, being that it's an international world. Here I am in Perth, and you're in the US, and there's people probably all over the world. LinkedIn is probably the only social media that I engage in. Probably the best way to do it. I'm of an older vintage of an era that had to embrace technology. But yeah, LinkedIn.
Like wine, just the best kind of
Yeah,
wine.
absolutely. Yeah, it gets better as he gets older. And but yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't think you'll find too many Torrin Minutillos. If you Google high level selling, there'll be something there. I think I sent you a link today with just a page where people can reach out to me, book a time in to have a conversation for 30 minutes, and I'll just no strings attached. I'm not interested in trying to sell people stuff, because that's exactly what I teach. It'll become natural to people, but I am willing to serve and help and get people to understand, because I'm passionate about this, and I think that the more we can get people understanding that you can serve people better when you take this approach, and there's lots of brave people that go into business. I believe they are, and as I said, 80%, I would imagine, is probably higher than that, don't go into it because they're really good at sales. And I thought, all right, what can I adapt this sales method to? It's usually they've got a passion about whatever it is they want to do, or potentially a skill they have, whether it's IT, whatever it is, that anything they can teach or help or serve or build or create a product, but they're not always good at selling that. So particularly small to medium-sized businesses, up to 50 people, where the key people are involved in the sales process, love to talk to them and help them through this and see if this message resonates with them. So yeah, reach out. Don't be shy. I'm always looking for a conversation.
Oh, I love this. Okay, Torrin, you've been so generous with your time. And here at Right Off Track, we wrap up with 3 rapid fire questions. So let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Well, I think I'm ready. I'm not sure.
Oof. Okay. We got this. Okay. So what's one common myth about entrepreneurship you'd like to debunk?
One common myth. Good question. A common myth that entrepreneurs are greedy, that are out for themselves to make money, which is a byproduct of what they're doing, not the only reason. And I think there's a big myth around that.
Oh, there's a long period of not making money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The truth is, it's a struggle every day, and you do have to embrace that struggle, of course. But yeah,
love it. What's the fastest way to build a professional network?
Human connection, no doubt. I think. I just think be authentic, be yourself, put the other person's needs in front of you, and you will build quickly relationships, because people will feel safe with you, and that's what we're looking for as humans.
Yeah. And then ask for a referral.
Well, interesting. The referrals is actually part of my program, and I've got a slightly different view on referral, and that is, and I'll just share it with you quickly, and just as a tip, is that we don't want to ask for a referral in the way that it makes the person we're asking become your sales consultant, right? So often what happens is we say, do you know anybody else? Can you tell them how good I am? Fill in the blank. But that's asking them to become your sales consultant. That puts them into a negative emotional state. They're less likely to do it. But if you find the right moment to empathetically ask, do you know anybody else that's having the same problem with that you are, that I've helped you with? That's a different question. They're more likely to say, yes, I know Mary, Bill, Barry, or Bob. Then the next thing you ask is, empathetically, would it be useful for me to have a conversation with them? And if they say yes to that, that's an opening for an introduction. But if you say, who do you know that I can help? You're now asking that person to become your sales rep. And there's only a small percentage of people, you may be one of them, Anya, that is a good connector. Like there's people who are connectors, right? So they're just like, I'll introduce you to everybody, right? But that's a small percentage of the world's population who are connectors. Most people don't feel comfortable in becoming someone else's sales rep. But if you ask in the empathetic way, is it useful for me to talk to someone you know is having the same problem you, and you need to frame it up correctly and use the right tonality, you will open a lot more doors, and you'll get 3 times, 4 times more referrals than what you're doing using the method of just ask and see what happens.
So powerful. Like just these little tips are worthwhile. So I hope you stay to the end to get them.
People pay
And
thousands
make
of
sure to
dollars for this
replay them.
sort of stuff, don't you?
Yeah, thousands of dollars right here. You're welcome. Okay. Last but not least, in the positive sense, going off track is.
Going off track is where all the good stuff is. Because if you stay inside the safety zone, inside the comfort zone, inside the track, you won't achieve the things that you want, because most of the stuff that we want is outside our comfort zone. So I'd say going off track is what actually takes you to where it is you want to go.
So beautifully put. Torrin, this was amazing. And to all of our listeners, I hope you got some more tips, saved yourself a little bit of money on this professional course. And if you want to learn more, again, check out the resources, because I'm sure there's so much more to glean from this, a lot richer course content you can get. But thank you so much for investing your time and energy into empowering yourself by listening to this episode today. And I also want to share that we are a podcast with purpose. And right now we're supporting the amazing nonprofit Ready to Empower, which has been empowering women worldwide for 10 years now. They're currently doing a donation drive for $50,000, 100% of which goes to operation costs. So if you feel like, hey, I want to make a positive impact in the world and empower others, share $1, $5, whatever feels right in your heart at the link below. I would so appreciate it by December 8th. And any final words for our guests and listeners, Torrin, before we wrap up?
Oh, look, I think if you're in business, just be brave. Courage is the pathway to everything. And when you're pushing up against the barrier of courage, push through, because it's not as bad on the other side as you think. And probably the last thing I'll say is one of my favorite sayings to get people to understand is that you can't get good at what you're not doing. So get in the game. The only way you're going to get better at, whether it's selling or talking in front of people or doing a podcast or whatever it is that you can't get good at what you're not doing. We try and over-engineer everything from outside the process. Get in the process, and what happens is you get insight from inside that process, not external of it. So when you're doing things, insight comes to you because you're seen from a different vantage point. Don't try and over-engineer everything from the outside. Get into the process, and if it's a little bit vulnerable, but you need that courage to push through. And certainly in my life's journey in the last 11 or 12 years, which I've used, that has served me very, very well and got me to a place that I've never thought I'd be able to get to. So that would be my last words.
Oh, and I'm so grateful you have come on this. And thank you to you and all of our listeners for joining this adventure with us. And as always, let's take over the world together, right off track. Until next time, take care.
Thanks, Anya. Appreciate the opportunity.